Sounds good.
Good. So tell me a wee bit about you. How long have you been with your organization for?
7.5 years in this position, and I was in private practice at an outside law firm before, so I had no experience in even working at a company before coming here. So.
Yeah, yeah. I think speaking to someone the other day, who was saying that once upon a time it was the outside counsel was the sort of the coveted role, and you could almost guarantee that if you went to law school these days, all the kids are trying to become the inside counsel, the general counsel instead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good
Switched.
opportunity to add a lot of value and do some interesting work, and it didn't take me long to realize that law firms are charging too much. So, but anyway. Yeah, I have 4 lawyers, 8 paralegals. I have compliance, ERM, and on and off I've had public policy. Right now I'm involved in public policy, but it's not reporting to me right now.
Okay. Okay. And does all the litigation, everything like that, does all the basic legal functions run through you there?
Yes, our HR doesn't, and some, that's pretty much it. We're involved in the IS stuff, but the IS attorney, actually reports up through our sister company, but of course I am responsible for making sure Priority Health gets what they need in that regard. So,
Okay.
But not very involved with HR anymore. And we don't have a lot of litigation, knock on wood.
I was just thinking, who's going to sue you? It's healthcare for your members in Michigan, right?
Yeah, in the process, a lot of health plans do get sued more than we do. I think it's probably because, if we owe the money, we pay it. And, there's a grievance process, an appeals process, then the person can appeal to the state, and then the state will say if they think it should be paid, and if the state says they think it should be paid, we pay it. And it's not till after that people have the right to sue. So it's kind of like...
So it's a pretty cut and dry process, and you cut them off at the pass if it goes that far.
Yeah, and so usually they're wrong if it gets that far. And so, often the lawyers they're trying to hire realize it. So, but, we're a nonprofit. We're not trying to not pay claims, so if it's appropriate. So,
okay.
So yeah, knock on wood, we haven't had too much of that. So.
Okay. And looking at your priorities, you've got vendor, contract risk, and process improvement. What would that be all about?
Yeah, so we did just get a tool for vendor contracts, but we have a lot. It's hard to engage the business owners to really do service level agreements and, try to outline well what vendors should do. More and more as a company, we have vendors doing high stake work, and we haven't been so good about overseeing them or even necessarily doing great due diligence on how we pick a vendor. So I'm involved in a small group of executives trying to improve that process, so not just from the legal side, but also, from the business side.
What's been
Although we've had some turnover in our vendor process on the legal side, and so we're trying to figure out how to consider new ways of getting our vendor contracts done and experimenting with some things before we decide for sure how we want that structure to work. So.
Okay. What's been the sort of the implications or the manifestations of some of the due diligence on some of these vendors not working out so well?
Well, we've traditionally, being a small company, we tend to move really fast. We're able to implement new things really fast. So we have a tendency to just try to get the project implemented without necessarily spending as much upfront time as we should, because we have a history of being able to get something going on a really short timeline. There tends to be an expectation that we can do it in a short timeline, but that doesn't necessarily allow for, sometimes doing as much upfront work as we might need. It's my personal opinion on how some of that happens. And that there's not a lot of training really for our folks who do it on what they should be doing. Even having more in writing about what is the expectation of somebody bringing a vendor on, that they will do, these 20 things, as opposed to just saying, well, legal will do the contract, right, and get them in here.
Mm.
So.
Okay.
And just how to measure things. So I have a lot of interest in what people are measuring in a lot of different areas, but contracts seems like it should be an area that we should be able to measure a lot more in, and we're not doing enough of that.
Okay. The other areas look like departmental succession planning and continuity.
Mm-hmm.
Is that training and developing the other senior legal leadership to make sure that they're A, good at their job, and B, they're slightly more motivated to stick around and join the team in the future versus get poached elsewhere?
Yeah, it's not so much worrying about the poaching. It's getting them ready to lead a company. We're growing. Even the skills that are needed for my role now than what were needed 7.5 years ago. We've grown so much. We've become a lot more sophisticated. And the same thing will probably happen over the next 5 years. And how do we make sure, as my senior lawyers are doing, the legal work every day, that they're also getting involved with enough bigger companies, strategic projects, that they get exposure to, high-level stuff and not just the little things that are, some people might be calling them about, not that they're all little, of course. And then, leadership training. And there's a lot of, for us, we kind of realized in the last couple of months that so many of the problems that, the lawyers and the paralegals in our legal department have can be solved not by legal thinking, but what we need more is, what I call like the crucial conversation stuff, because it's more of what we need. This process isn't really going well. It hasn't been going well for years, and we keep thinking if we do the same thing that, we'll get a different result. And what we need to probably be doing more of is going out and talking to other business owners about how we could work together differently. And, this process could be inefficient in part because of the way that they do things, and how can we, do things better for the company. A lot of things that we see, but, it hasn't been a normal thing for our department to lead in those areas. It's more like we do what we're asked to do, and that not 100%. We're definitely rolling out of that. But, lawyers don't necessarily have those skills or a lot of experience in going out and having those tougher conversations to solve those problems.
Yep.
So that's another thing, of, it's kind of that softer skill stuff, which, might not be anything you're talking about at the conference, but, those are the kinds of things on my mind. Because they're, really good lawyers, but it takes more than being a lawyer now to be a general counsel.
No, this is actually one of the absolute topics being discussed there. It's simply, I think more people are looking at that. I think it's sort of split between a succession planning. We need the people to have the skills internally. With those organisations who are looking at it as, you know what, we can do cookie cutter training or no training, but the best of the best are the ones that seem to sort of notice and resent that, and it just becomes an effective way of hanging on to the folks you want to hang on to by putting something into them and trying to make them better and feel good about themselves as well as the practical sort of talent management concerns internally.
And I would say the other thing with talent is the use of paralegals. Really coming up with processes to push work down to the lowest level that can do it. And it's taken a lot of years of subtle prodding. We've tried it a number of times to push work down, and the lawyers just always found it was more work than it was worth and would end up doing their own thing. And then we recently got a young new paralegal out of school who really wanted to learn and was really excited to do the work, and because she wanted the work and it wasn't like, oh, you're giving me work again, every time that the lawyer came to see them, that they have started to figure out how to delegate and how to give feedback to improve the paralegals so that they can take work off their plate. And I think that has a lot of benefits for a number of things. One related to succession planning is, when a lawyer leaves, if we have a paralegal who's been working closely with them, who knows what they've been doing and knows where their documents are and has some idea of the advice they're giving, I think that has a lot of, benefit for the department. Also, those folks are, potentially likely to stick around a little bit longer. They're not necessarily expecting to be on some leadership track or, what's my next promotion. They didn't go to paralegal school thinking that they were going to be, promoted up to VP, And so, and if you get really good ones and train them well, that they can give a lot of advice, so we've been talking about how can we raise the profile of what the lawyers are doing so that the paralegals can kind of come and say, pull the law, here's what I think it is, do you agree? Yep, I agree. You can go tell the client X, Y, and Z, or do a first draft of that letter, so that the lawyers frees them up to be able to do some of the bigger picture stuff that they need to be able to do if they want to continue to grow in the company, or just even to make their lives a lot more interesting, right? If they could be doing higher level work instead of, answering everybody's random questions. So that's some stuff we've been talking about as well.
Okay. The other key areas look here like matter management seems to be a key area. Why is that of high interest?
I'm sorry, what did you say? Oh, matter management. So so the knowledge management piece, we have had a few people leave over the last 3 years. We didn't have good expectations about, so it's not so much with outside counsel, but with our own advice. Where are we keeping it? How do we keep track of so when somebody transitions, that you have any idea what they've been working on or advice they might have given last year. So it feels like every time we have to start from scratch, and kind of, instead of having this knowledge base that we're keeping and building on. And so we've been trying to figure out how to set expectations around that, but that's also one. It's it feels like it took me 2 years to get people to understand why it was important. We're just not making enough progress around it. So knowing more what people do with that would be helpful.
Is the whole sort of records retention sort of cyber sort of issue? It's one of the things that a lot of folks are sort of talking about, where it was previously an IT issue, and now boards of directors have said, you know what, it starts as an IT issue, but it finishes as a legal issue. General counsel get involved. Is that the sort of transition that's happened in your own organization, or is it still predominantly an IT issue?
Both. So the privacy side, and this is big for our organization, so we spend a lot of time and money on it. I have responsibility. It's not really in legal, but I have responsibility for priority health of making sure that our chief privacy officer, who reports actually to the hospital, but then kind of like has a dotted line to me for making sure we get what we need from priority health. And I'm on like a little security group, like that we would respond to breaches and things like that. So, it's not in my day-to-day, but definitely something I'm interested in.
Okay. One of the topics that may not be as relevant to you, but one topic that sort of seems to be near and dear to a lot of folks is just looking at the sort of the efficiency and future-proofing of the sort of legal department in general, in terms of just looking at cost and process efficiency. What they can outsource, what they can insource, where technology can help speed or improve accuracy or cost or whatnot. Is that something that you yourselves are looking at, or are you already ahead of the curve there? Or is it not as relevant to you guys for some reason?
No, I'm definitely interested in that.
Okay. What would be this is, I guess, my final question. What would be a good win for you in terms of the data points that you'd like to walk away with listening to your peers around the country talking about? Like, is there anything in particular that, if you can gain sort of access to and get some insights and ideas, that would be, for whatever reason, especially useful?
I think, some of this for me, because the laws we deal with, other than maybe in the privacy and security area, are so health plan specific that for me, it's more about structure and people and, new ways of doing things than, actual rules around things, unless they relate to just, how do you analyze risk in general, or, those types of things. So.
Yep. So best practices from organisations who aren't necessarily in healthcare, which hopefully be some different ways of thinking and doing things with regards to sort of process and people, that perhaps you can borrow one or two of those ideas.
Yeah.
Okay, good enough. Any questions from you to me before I let you fly?
No, that's it.
Good. Well,